Do you have anything planned for this weekend, Soji? Easter weekend?
Yeah, I'm going to Paris. I'll be speaking at a summit. Um, the summit is for 4th and 5th, where we have the French ambassador to Nigeria will also be there to be speaking. So I'll be sharing the stage. I'll be sharing the stage with some diplomats, some ambassadors. So we're discussing how Nigerian journalists and Nigerian filmmaker can, collaborate with French filmmakers, so basically that's what we'll be discussing. So I got the invite about a month ago. So it's for next week. So I'll be heading to Paris this weekend.
So we're lucky to have you today. Okay, now I think this is a good time to start. So just to welcome everyone officially to the Knowledge Exchange session for March, which is something I've learned. Most of you probably know I ran across Soji through TikTok, one of the great outputs of that social platform, which I'm a real fan of. And he's agreed to come along today and just speak for a short while about a lesson that he's learned in life that he thinks we all might benefit from. So I'm just going to hand straight over to you. When you finish talking, Soji, we'll have a chance for some questions and a bit of discussion, hopefully. But please tell us what you've learned. One thing.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Steve, for this opportunity to share what I've learned so far. And I've been following the forum for a while. So, but then what I've discovered is the fact that life is a continuous journey. We get to discover things as we go on with our journey in life. But I must confess something very profound, a very profound lesson that I've learned over time is the power of resilience. In the face of adversity, when life challenges come, these challenges are inevitable. They come at us. So we need to learn how to be resilient to face it, even when setback comes. Another valuable lesson I've learned is the importance of empathy. Showing empathy and compassion to other people. It goes a long way. I'm going to use Steve as an example. I was just browsing through Instagram. I think that's about 2 years ago. I was browsing through through TikTok, and I discovered that the algorithm kept on bringing Steve's messages to my timeline, and there was a particular day I just decided to let me even check out this guy. I checked it out and I discovered that, oh, okay, he also speaks in French. Does that mean he's based in France? So I now went into his profile, checked all his videos, and I discovered he's based in France. Now, I talked about the fact that life has taught me to show empathy towards and compassion towards the next person. Immediately I reach out to Steve and I say, hey, my name is Soji, I'm new in France. And he responded. That's a great lesson that I learned from him. He responded and he said something. He said, how can I help you? In any way you think I can help you, I'm ready to help you. And I told him that day, I said, the issue is I don't want monetary help, but if you can help me with resources that can help my stay in France, because this is me coming from Africa. I was coming from a different cultural background. I'm coming from a black continent coming into Europe, and it's a different entirely for me. I was depressed at that time. I was going through a lot, but the little empathy that Steve showed to me, opened my world up, and in less than a month, he sent me a stick, a USB stick. I still have that USB stick with me that, that converts English to French, and let me just quickly touch a little background about my background. I was a journalist in Nigeria, and I derive pleasure in investigative journalism. I always like to investigate things and bring them to limelight, and it was going on well for me. I'm a young man that is doing well for myself, And but there was a part where it was towards the general election in Nigeria in 2022, and I stumbled upon a breaking news about one of the presidential aspirants, and immediately I stumbled upon a whole file. All I just did was to just drop a nugget and say, okay, I got to discover that the education of this person is fake. He never went to those universities. He never did this. He never did that. So I just posted it online. And in less than 1 week, my 6-year-old daughter was kidnapped. And I was asked to drop that news, to go and take that news down immediately. Otherwise, my daughter will be killed. And this is a daughter I had after about 7 years of marriage. So I was ready to let go of everything because of my daughter. So right immediately, just about 10 minutes after I posted that news, I took it down, and somebody told me that your life is not safe. If they can kidnap your daughter, then they can kidnap your wife. They can kidnap your mother. So I told my wife, it's time to leave the country. The following day, I didn't bother to take my property. I left my cars, I left everything. I just picked a bag, I picked my laptop, picked my hard drive, and told my wife to pick her bag as well. And we lodged in an hotel. And but luckily for me, I already had a French visa for the whole family. So about 3 days after, I moved my family out of the country and I moved them into France. And when we came into France, I approached the French government and I said, hey, look at what I'm going through. This is evidence to prove that this is what I'm actually going through. I want an asylum. I want you guys to, I need you guys to rescue me. And I was shocked. The French government said there's nothing they can do, that they cannot grant me asylum, but they can allow me stay in the country. Now, if you stay in a country without the necessary documents, what that means is that you cannot work in that country. You are not, you cannot open a bank account. You cannot do a lot of things with that document. So how could you say you are allowing me to stay in your country, but you are not giving me the necessary resources, But luckily for me, I came into France with some money. So I immediately got an apartment, put my family in the apartment, and we were here. But one thing I learned is that first and foremost, the safety of my family is secured. I know they're safe here in France. And so I just went online and I started, sending content back to Nigeria. I started writing, and people started paying me for writing for them. And from the money I get from that, I'm able to pay my house rent. I'm able to sort my bill and take care of myself, But then, in all of this, one major thing I've learned in life or in my journey coming here is the fact that showing compassion, showing empathy on people that I meet on my way, regardless of their racial background, regardless of who they are, regardless of where they're coming from, regardless of their skin color. I think I picked that particular message from Steve from his Art of Kindness, because at the time he sent me that stick, the USB stick, for me to learn the basic French. I was going through a lot. I was going through depression. I was down and everything. So basically for me, that's a major lesson. And that's one thing I have learned in this short time, Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Soji. Just to say to everybody, I never ask people what they're going to say, and I don't ever want to know beforehand. So that was a big surprise what you shared. Sending a stick to somebody, a USB stick, is easy. It costs almost nothing, takes very little time. And I had no idea it was landing at such an important point in your life. So I'm very pleased to hear that. What you said is incredibly eloquent and very powerful. And I have one question. Others will have other questions. You spoke at the beginning about resilience, and I wondered if you have any tips for how to develop resilience if you don't have it. Whether you have any ideas how you can make that a stronger characteristic in yourself. Mm-hmm.
Take that question again.
I was asking about resilience and how we can develop resilience in ourselves, if you have any answers to that.
I think another thing, if you talk about resilience, you know, there are a lot of things in us that we don't know that we have until we were faced with challenges. There are a lot of positive things about us. There are a lot of character that we have in us that we don't even know we have those characters until we're faced with things that we bring out the character. So I think being resilient is something that comes from the inner mind, and not until you're faced with obstacle, you know, before you know that you can actually adapt. So in most cases, you have to learn to persevere. You have to learn patience, and yeah, with all of this, the resilient spirit would come up.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for being so frank and open with us today, and I'm just going to throw it to others for comments or questions.
Can I just clarify, because you didn't mention it? I really hope and understand from the way you were speaking that your daughter did come back.
Oh.
I don't think you mentioned it unless I missed.
So immediately I took down that the article. I was asked to sign a document and promise not to post anything about that particular candidate, which I did. And after about 30 minutes, my daughter was returned, and you know, I was broken when I saw my daughter. And luckily she returned. She was safe and she was fine, and I had to just flee the country. I flee the country and come into France. Yes, she was returned, and she's here in France.
And speaking French very well, I'm sure.
Oh,
I'd like
she
to
speaks French very well, very fluently now.
Incredible.
I'd like to ask a question, please. Sorry you can't see me, but I don't know how to make my video work. I understand that corruption is a real challenge in Nigeria. Are there any ways in which we can help?
Help Nigeria or help? I don't understand.
Okay. People say that there is corruption in the UK, but it's just not so visible somehow. But it feels as though it's almost endemic in Nigeria. And it seems, you know, how do you begin to stop it? And, you know, you were trying, and then you were effectively forced out of the country. But, you know, it feels as though I'm helpless to do anything in that situation.
Okay. So I'm sorry to say this, but it's the reality. 8 of every 10 Nigerian is corrupt. So you can imagine when 8 of every 10 person is corrupt, it is difficult to curb corruption. I must tell you, the problem with corruption in Nigeria, it has eaten so deep that it is very difficult for it to be curbed now. But I believe that probably maybe the next generation the next generation of youths can work towards it. But to curb corruption in Nigeria is not something that is going to happen in the next 10, 15, 20 years. It's difficult because the powerful people are the most powerful people in Nigeria are the most corrupt. So, and corruption spans across every sector in Nigeria. There's corruption in the police, there's corruption in the army, in the military, and even the court. You know, the judiciary that you think, oh, if anything happens, we can run to. The judiciary are the most corrupt organization in Nigeria. So it's difficult to curb corruption in Nigeria. It's very difficult, and it's visible. You know, there's corruption in France, but it's not visible. You almost can't see it, but there's corruption. But in Nigeria, you can see it, it's visible, and there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah.
But my observation about corruption, having worked in quite a lot of different parts of the world, is that it's pretty much everywhere amongst people who have power. And because we don't have much power as ordinary citizens, we don't come across it mostly in European countries. But I think you don't need to go any further than the PPE contracts in the COVID pandemic in the UK to see how huge contracts were dished out to people with connections to those in power who made the decisions. And you know, it's as much corruption as the policeman on a Lagos street taking a bribe to avoid somebody paying a fine. So I think, and what I discovered when I first started out as a young volunteer in Zambia 40 odd years ago was that the border crossing guards on the border to DRC, they weren't paid. They didn't receive any salary from the government. They were supposed to, but they didn't. And so they were forced to take money from people who are crossing the border. They needed to feed their families. So it's very easy to think of corruption as a very clear issue. It never is. And I think Rosemary's question about what can we do about it, all we can do is in our own private worlds, fight against favoritism in the things that we do, and try and extend that to the contacts we have. I don't know if there are any other questions or whether we've had enough to think about for the time being. You certainly give us a lot to think about for the rest of the week. Yes, Chris.
This isn't exactly a question, but just moving on, you know, as we're looking at that whole area of corruption, and of course, I completely see and have seen that people with power can change or appear to change from being people that attract huge respect in the first stages and then find themselves tipping into a different place. And then on the other side, right from sort of the lowest of the low of us, if you think that if you're trying to find somebody to do something and you know someone who's good at it, you know, you have to somehow, to get to your point, Stephen, put aside what is a kind of, I don't know, giving place to someone just because you know them, to finding the best person for that position, isn't it?
It's why I say it's never straightforward, because
exactly.
Sometimes you can save a huge amount of money by immediately allocating a job or a task or a contract to somebody who's well qualified and will do a good job. Where it becomes problematic is where, as we saw before in the COVID thing, people with no qualifications were given millions to do something they weren't capable of doing. That's where I think Rosemary's point about feeling helpless, I certainly do.
The breaking news here today, Steve, is someone that donated £10 million to the Conservative Party some months ago is being recommended by Rishi Sunak for a knighthood or a place in the Lords. and that's today's news in the UK. So
Well,
it's we're with it everywhere. Yeah.
yeah. But I think we can fight against it as individuals in our own little worlds, and we have to. And where someone like Soji has been through that experience and is now tells us he's speaking at a conference in Paris next week, we need to support him in whatever he needs. You know, like I for one will be being in touch with you much more from now on, because even if there's just something we can do in terms of a conversation, or, you know, where we have links to people, it might be in other countries, it might be in our own country, to support those who are doing something. Yeah, that's one of the things we can do, I suppose.
Thinking again, I mean, yes, obviously things have to start with us as individuals where we are and behaving in what we see as the right way. What I've become lazy at, I think, I mean, is sort of putting my name against things. Now, you might feel that it doesn't do much good, you know, but I sort of have regular things from Global Citizen, and there are always petitions or things to be brought to people's attention. And I do attend to some of them, but a lot of them are just scroll past. And I guess that it's for each of us as individuals to work out how and what and when it's our voice that we need to sign up behind any particular cause or anything.
Mm.
And some of those are not very clear cut or are complicated. So for those of you who don't know, which is probably just Soji, I'm Frankie, I live on the Isle of Man, and one of the key sources of income here is on online gaming. And there was a protest outside the headquarters of one of those companies this last week. Well, as it happened, I was doing something else. You know, I was already committed to doing something, so I didn't go. But I had been at one a few days earlier about the Palestinians, where I felt even more strongly than I do about online gaming. So, yeah, kind of balancing the responsibilities and our diaries also against what we can and can't do is not always easy.
Did you mean online gambling, Rosie, or?
Well, I think it's not just gambling, but I think it is largely gambling.
Okay, yeah. Because a lot of people do a lot of online gaming that is fairly innocuous. That was all I was thinking. But,
yeah, and I think I think the problem with it is that a lot of it is gambling. But that's another example. I don't know. You know, I know that we have these companies. I know that they talk about it as being online gaming rather than gambling, but I suspect that's to make it sound more respectable.
I like, if possible, to give everyone a chance to contribute. So even if they may not want to, which is fine, but just Frankie, to give you a chance to join in if you want to before we finish, by chat or by microphone. No pressure. Otherwise, we'll draw this to a close, I think. Yes, Chris.
Well,
Frank. Yeah.
Is Frankie on it?
No, carry on. You carry on, Chris.
Well, I mean, I know you're going to do this from where you're sitting, but I'd like to say thank you so much to Soji for again sharing, because, you know, this is a knowledge exchange. We've all got, as Stephen's already said, things to go away and think about. And thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you.
Yeah.
Here.
It's a pleasure.
I don't need to say any more. I'll be in touch with you all individually, especially you, Soji, because I like to end these meetings sort of quickly so we don't hang around wondering who's going to say what. But it's been a fantastic fantastic morning. Really appreciate you all taking the time to join us. And
Danielle has just joined.
Danielle.
Yeah.
Danielle Anato. Oh, it's gone. No.
Let's just see if we can make contact with her.
She's muted at the moment.
Welcome, Danielle. You joined us just as we're finishing, I'm afraid to say, but we've had a great time. It will be recorded. Oh, it has been recorded. and I'll put it up on the Knowledge Exchange website in a few days' time. So that's www.theknowledgeexchange.net. And there's a video section there, and I'll make sure this goes up, because this is going to be a wonderful resource to come back to in the future. Danielle, lovely to see you or hear from you just briefly. Frankie, thanks for joining. Rosie, Chris, Nigel, Soji, see you again soon.
Yes, all the best.
Bye for now.